Hey, welcome to the garden in late June. In fact, it's the last Monday of the month, so I think it's the 26th. Here I'm checking my ground cover. They're doing well. Goldfish is doing well. That Boston Thorn is doing extremely well considering it's been sitting outside since mid-spring. I'm just checking up and things. Now you see over here with this bush for the shade. See, I've laid that material from the compost bin around that plant. That is mulch. That is perfectly fine, and it's actually beneficial to the plant. You see, here's a butterfly bush that's getting ready to bloom. You see more flowers getting ready to bloom over here. And my other butterfly bush was just slightly off to, well, you see it in the frame now. I'm just inspecting, make sure there's no issues. Checking my bell peppers, because they're starting to produce. They're a little bit on the smaller side one I like, but you know, we end it. This is a new garden bed, so I expect some issues. It's okay. You can log what you got the first year, then you modify. See, these sunflowers, which I did not plant, it's okay. It will actually help shade the peppers, which they do like having afternoon shade. So FYI, I actually banged the tomato case, which is what got hit right there. The reason why I put those in there, or have those in bell pepper plants in tomato cases, because it will help stabilize the plants. Bell peppers are very fragile. I don't know how many times I've tried to pull a pepper off a plant and taken that entire growth with me. Very annoying. These there's a bell pepper. There's some more. Now I always like to check, like that one right there is a bad one. There's no reason to have it in the plant because it's going to suck away energy and growth. So that's a perfect candidate to grow in my compost bin. But I will actually draw it to my vermicomposter. Now I'm fairly okay with this, but you're going to have losses. That's just how nature is. You see, like this one. This was loaded full with blackberries, and you see only one. Now I'm actually checking my neighbor's strawberries there. You see some develop. This is a better example with losses. For example, you see how those berries look like they've been nipped. That's because a mockingbird's come in and decided he was going to take some samples. It happens. If you want to preserve a crop, invest in some bird netting. Cover up the plants. I always feel like nature deserves a part. But interesting, blackberries, like you see that when they're red, then they ripen to black. Here's some edible honeysuckle, which will be hopeful to produce next year. You saw the bee balm over there with the purple spikes. I'm going to check the sunflower, see if the bees are foraging. But you see one right here, a prime example. That's always a good sign. You see how that wind really laid that one down? It's starting to get heavy with seeds. You see a prime example of that later, and there's the end. There's the hive. You see how many bees are buzzing around? That's showing a strong hive. This is when I was not expecting this in July, late June. You see the water pump there, the fountain. You see how there's some bees already there drinking? That's why I have that fountain there, which actually is I have a whiskey barrel with some plants planted in it that I raised a fountain up, cut a hole in it so it has access to water. That will allow the bees the place to have nourishment, water. That also works for the pollinators. And it will attract the birds, which is double-edged sword, because, some of these birds eat the bees. It happens. But they also eat the pests in the garden. So, you know, what are you going to do? And I'm just checking my plants here. Seeing if I have any bees around there. Some of these, you'll see some native bees. It's all looking fairly good, considering this has all survived a major windstorm. And what I'm doing with this finger is what we call this testing the dryness. You stick a finger in the pot, until you feel the water. Basically, you stick a finger in the pot. How deep you go until you feel moisture. In that case, it went all the way, a good 2 to 3 inches. That's how I know I need a water. You see the oregano and thyme. The oregano is blooming. But the honeybees will actually love the herbs. And I'm just checking to see if there's any native bees around here. Checking the blueberries. Those the anoma berries. Checking these, and I see those are needing some water. See how they're kind of droopy? This is why I'm checking dryness. Those are some artichoke, which is it looks like a sunflower. It can take over a yard. It's a potato substitute. You can eat the roots if you want. Here's my grapes. As you see, that hill really banged it on. So you can see how the damage of the grapes is. You see how that growth has got cut off? It happens. See some onions in the corner there. Those are my elderberry, which you see some elderberries being formed. Or made, excuse me. And those are my squash, which you see me actually checking the squash bugs. So you have to check underneath. Like you see those squash right there. That's what happens if you let a squash bug infection go too long. It will kill a plant overnight. I do not enjoy having those critters. No matter how many times I plant squash, I always seem to attract them. Now I'm checking my tomatoes here, which is more of what they call a plum grape. This is a cross between a grape and something else. Random piece of grass. That's somebody see how that wind just damaged all the sunflowers they flopped over. It's making it easy for me to see the beans in there, but it makes it harder for me to get in at the same time. You know, what are you gonna do? You see the flowers that are blooming. There's some black-eyed Susans. The lettuce is getting ready to bloom, which I believe that will be some purple daisy-like flowers. Black-eyed Susans, where you see a native bee right there. And you see the basil, the herbs that I have managed to survive. The butterfly house. It's actually a revised shelter for the bees if they need it. But you see, this is a prime example. That tomato is good to go. However, I inspect it. You see how it's banged up? It actually has like that spot right there is real bad. That's a real sunburn, which makes the fruit unedible. Just check the other flowers. Now you see that, excuse me. Checking my strawberries, which I believe I have a couple of strawberries being formed, but I've never had strawberries formed this late in the season, so that's interesting to me. Now I'm going to go check try to step any strawberries, but check in here, see if there's any tomatoes that need to be pulled. Not step on anything, obviously. Those tomatoes look a little different because those are actually what we call blue blacks. They will actually turn blue. That one's a little small, but I left it because I didn't see any issues with it. Now I'm just trying to get around this thing because I haven't been trimming these. I usually let them go a little wild. There's another example of the blue-black. Those are what we call 4 o'clocks, which they actually open up the flowers overnight. Now I'm just going to inspect the rest of the garden. See, there's a lot of weeds down there. That's Queen Anne's lace, which is a carrot that if you let go to seed, it takes 2 years. Now all these sunflowers I didn't plant. But you see how easily it is to be overran. Believe it or not, I actually have cucumbers in this mess. So I'm actually looking for those cucumbers. There's one right there. Or that's a piece of grass or tree, whatever. There's a cucumber right there. And you actually see the female flowers because you see the fruit. The shape of the fruit. But the reason why I've let the sunflowers grow is the cucumbers will actually latch on and climb those stalks. There's another, I believe it's a cucumber. And the sunflowers will actually shade the cucumbers in the afternoon, which is beneficial for them because they don't like this type of heat. Now we're getting the fun spot. You see, I'm checking my bean plants. Make sure there's no beans over in the corner. Look at those. Look at those beans on there. But I check because you don't want to harvest them too small. There you go. There's a bean right there. You don't want to harvest them too small. You want to be about pencil thick. Because what happens if you harvest them too small and you try to cook them, they shrink. They basically just keep shrinking until you don't get anything back. So if you let them get too thick, then they become unedible because they've gone to seed. The seeds you can't really eat. Like, there's more good examples. I was checking all those. I think I harvested a handful, not a whole lot, but a bean's a bean. And that's all I'm doing for the next, several frames. Just going through checking, see what beans they are. Now, when you let our beans go, like in the case like me, where I have going to the side, be mindful of our neighbor's dogs. They may end up destroying those vines by mistake. I'm not trying to step on anything. It's checking the beans. That's all I'm doing for several frames. You see how it's a bit of a jungle in here? Like I said, you have a note for you will find sprouts everywhere. The sunflowers are flopping over because of that wind. So you see, again, that's not all I can do about it. Is let it just, go as it wants, improvise, figure it out. And just try and find a spot to fly, not to step on the beans. Don't want to crush anything. Don't want to disrupt anything. I'm also checking to see if there's any type of pest in here. Any diseases. See if I find anything that I do not want in that bed. I'm not getting to every single spot. It's just too much there. Now I'm gonna get out of there. Like, there's another cucumber. That's the reason why I was watching my feet, because I didn't want to step on something like that. Now I am fighting the sunflowers again. But considering all the events over the last week, garden's doing fairly well. I've actually added out the video of me getting filling up a water can, watering multiple things. With harvesting, some people have different methods. I just like to lay it on the table and come back to it. Some people actually will have like a container or a pouch. They will store everything in there. At this stage, it's such a small harvest, it's not needed. If I had a larger one, yeah, I would actually have a bag or something to draw all the goodies in. I'm checking the fountain. So it's actually beneficial for the bees to have because it's a source of water. It's a source of water for the other pollinators, as well as it attracts the birds, like I said. So the larger the running water is, the easier it is. Hanging baskets, you have to keep them constantly watered. They just don't have deep enough roots. Here, I believe I'll be checking a sunflower. Like you see how the sunflowers are dripping over. It's because they're starting to develop seeds, and that seed head is getting heavier than the plant gets support, so it leans over, and those seeds will actually fall to the ground. That's how it self-sows. But it's also a source of food for a lot of birds. So I actually will leave those things alone. I think I will sew it off a bit later in this clip. You see I'm just watering various things that's been missed. Like something like that that sunflower really doesn't allow a lot of water to drip directly on those pots. Lavender there. I'm just making sure that nothing's getting interfered with. Now I'm going back to check on, see if there's any pollination going on here. See if there's any pollinators. Yeah, this was what I was talking to you a few minutes ago. See how that head is full of seed? You see how it's just flopping over? At this point, you can cut it off, dry it, and harvest the seeds. Or you can just take the stalk, weave it to a fence, let the birds eat it. I was going to leave it right there. Let nature do its thing. Because, I don't have to worry about the sunflowers themselves, so. In this watering, this time of year, a lot of water goes out the gate to keep the plants alive. You see how the grapevine there is taking over everything? Those are some yellow onions that I'm watering. Just make sure they get enough. Just make sure they're surviving. You saw Bandit there. Yeah, you see how many bees I have. That hive is doing quite well. Wasn't expecting that this time of year. But you see how the bees are just enjoying that water fountain. Not too bad. I mean, I've lost most of my produce first grow, but it happens. You always have a risk. Would they recover? Yeah. I might not get as much. That's okay. It happens. Some years you have better years than others. And sometimes you have really great years, and other times you don't get anything. It's the way farming works. Another oak tree. I don't know how many times I pull those suckers up. Seems like every one I pull out, there's more and more and more.